Hey guys, tonight we journey into the shadowy world of medieval kings. Not to celebrate their crowns or conquests, but to uncover the secret weapons they wielded against their enemies. These hidden tools and tactics shaped the fate of kingdoms and changed history in ways few ever knew. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. The Royal Falcon that delivered coded messages across borders. Imagine yourself in a time when kingdoms were divided not just by land, but by words that could not be trusted on parchment or by courier. The communication of important, secret information was a challenge that shaped the outcomes of alliances and conflicts. In such a world, an unlikely ally emerged from the skies. The Royal Falcon, a creature trained not only for the hunt, but for carrying coded messages across hostile borders, silently weaving its way through enemy lands. The story of the Royal Falcon as a messenger is one woven deeply into the fabric of medieval and early modern diplomacy. These birds were no ordinary animals. They were the finely tuned instruments of rulers who understood that information was as valuable as any army. Imagine the falcon's sleek feathers glinting faintly in the sunlight as it takes flight from the stone parapets of a castle. Bound beneath its wings or attached delicately to its legs, small scrolls of parchment, inscribed with carefully coded letters, make this creature a living carrier of secrets. To understand the significance of the falcon's role, it helps to consider the precarious nature of communication in eras before telegraphs or reliable postal services. Sending a message was a risk, a task fraught with the chance of interception or loss. Roads were often dangerous, couriers vulnerable to bandits or enemy spies. Letters sealed with wax and bearing a noble signet could be forged or confiscated, compromising entire strategies. Here, the falcon's advantage lay in its speed, altitude, and ability to bypass ground patrols undetected. Falconry itself was an esteemed art, closely associated with nobility and royal courts. The birds were highly trained, their behavior carefully cultivated over years of patient effort. Imagine the long hours spent by falconers, nurturing the trust and bond between human and bird, teaching the falcon to respond to whistles and to return reliably to its handler. This relationship was not only practical, but also intimate, the falcon embodying a quiet elegance that fit well within the ritualized life of the aristocracy. What sets these royal falcons apart in the annals of history is their use in covert communication, an invisible thread tying distant courts and battlefronts. The messages they carried were often encoded, employing cipher systems to protect the contents even if the bird was intercepted. Think of a tiny scroll wrapped carefully to avoid disturbing the bird's flight, inscribed with a code that only the recipient could understand. These messages might contain troop movements, diplomatic requests, or warnings of impending danger, information that could decisively influence the course of events. There are recorded instances where the use of falcon messengers played a pivotal role in silent wars. Conflicts fought not only with swords and shields, but with information that traveled unseen. One can imagine a tense political landscape where a single falcon's arrival at a fortified castle brought urgent news that prevented a surprise attack or sealed a secret alliance. In a world where every message was a gamble, these birds became symbols of trust and hope. The falcon's journey was not without peril. Imagine the bird navigating over rugged mountains or thick forests, the wind a constant companion, its wings slicing through air thick with the scent of pine and damp earth. Enemy falconers or archers might seek to intercept or shoot down these winged couriers. The birds themselves had to be both swift and intelligent, trained to avoid dangers and find their way home over distances that would exhaust a human messenger. Their very survival depended on the care and skill of their handlers. The dual life of the royal falcon, part hunting companion, part secret courier, reflected the complexity of medieval noble life. On one hand, these birds were admired for their prowess in the hunt, participating in rituals that displayed power and control over nature. On the other, they served as silent diplomats, carrying words that could change the fate of kingdoms. Imagine the hush of a court as a falcon was released from its hood, wings unfolding in a graceful arc, a living link between rulers separated by suspicion and distance. The cultural symbolism of the falcon added another layer to its role. In many traditions, falcons represented vision, speed, and freedom, qualities that suited their messenger duties well. Nobles often adorned themselves and their banners with falcon imagery, reinforcing the association between the bird and noble authority. The falcon's image was a reminder that information was power, and that mastery over such power required patience and precision. Beyond the grand stage of politics, these falcon messengers connected to the rhythm of daily life in castles and courts. Their presence was a constant undercurrent, a quiet assurance that no matter the turbulence beyond the walls, communication could be maintained. The falcon's flight was a gentle but persistent thread linking individuals across distances where roads were treacherous and voices could not carry. Over time, as technology advanced, the role of the falcon evolved and eventually diminished. The rise of more reliable courier systems and later telegraphy rendered the bird's secret flights obsolete. Yet, their legacy remains a fascinating window into a time when nature and human ingenuity merged to overcome the obstacles of communication. The royal falcon was not simply a pet or a hunting tool, but a critical participant in the unfolding drama of history. As you consider this delicate balance of trust, skill, and silent flight, imagine the falcon settling back onto its handler's glove, the soft rustle of feathers mingling with the distant murmur of the court. Its work for the day done, it becomes once more a symbol of quiet strength and vigilance, a reminder of how even the smallest, most graceful creature could carry the weight of kingdoms upon its wings. In this way, the royal falcon story invites reflection on the subtle, often unseen forces that shape history. The whispered words, the coded letters, and the patient flight of a bird crossing borders where human voices dare not go. Imagine yourself watching that flight, a quiet witness to a message carried through the air, a secret passing silently through time. The blind musician who was actually the king's spy. Imagine yourself in a time when kingdoms stretched vast across lands crisscrossed with tangled forests, bustling market towns, and watchful castles. The air is thick with the scent of earth and wood smoke, mingled with the faint, lingering sweetness of wildflowers and fresh hay. In such a world, information was as precious as gold, and those who could carry it without drawing notice were invaluable. Among these figures, a most unusual character moved quietly through villages and courts alike. A blind musician, traveling from town to town with nothing but a worn lute strapped gently to his back. His fingers danced over strings, coaxing soft melodies and ancient ballads that carried tales of heroes and distant places. To the casual observer, he was merely a humble bard, offering entertainment for coins and companionship in the taverns. Yet beneath the gentle strum of his instrument lay a secret far more intricate and profound. This was no ordinary minstrel. Behind the dark veil of his closed eyes, he held a sharper vision, the role of a spy, entrusted by the king himself to gather intelligence in enemy lands. The world of medieval espionage was a quiet, shadowed one, unlike the battlefield, where the clash of steel and roar of battle echoed. The spy's domain was subtlety, silence, and the patient weaving of trust. The blind musician's disguise was perfect. As a wandering bard, he was welcomed into homes and halls, offered food and shelter. His blindness disarmed suspicion, inviting generosity rather than scrutiny. His instrument, a lute crafted with care, concealed a slender tube hidden within its neck. This small, ingenious compartment carried secret messages. Delicate scrolls of parchment bearing war plans, troop movements, and coded instructions. The lute was not just his voice, but his vessel, carrying whispers of kingdoms across borders where swords could not reach. But how did he learn the secrets without sight? His method was as remarkable as the disguise itself. Through the rhythms and cadences of conversations, the murmur of maps unfolding, the footsteps pacing in guarded rooms, and the murmured verses of soldier songs, he memorized layouts, watch schedules, and strategic details. His mind transformed sound into a mental map, a living, breathing tapestry of information. Imagine yourself listening to his lute under the flicker of candlelight, each note a thread woven into the larger fabric of his covert work. The subtle changes in tone, the pauses between words, even the creak of a door hinge became clues recorded in the archive of his memory. His mind was a vault where danger and duty entwined. The role of music in medieval society was more than mere amusement. It was storytelling, news, and a connection across distances. Bards carried not only songs but history and wisdom, weaving the lives of common folk and nobility alike into their verses. This musician used this tradition as a shield and a tool. His songs were filled with coded signals, familiar only to those who knew to listen beyond the melody. The world outside his performances was often harsh and uncertain. Kingdoms waged silent wars that depended on knowledge rather than armies alone. A single piece of intelligence could shift the tide of conflict, saving lives or condemning thousands. The stakes were immense, and the blind musician moved at the edge of danger, relying on intuition and memory. Despite his blindness, he was not alone. A network of trusted allies, messengers, informants, and fellow travelers supported his mission. Together, they formed a fragile web of communication spanning miles and borders. The silent cooperation between these unseen hands was a testament to human resilience and ingenuity. His story reminds us that sight is but one way to perceive the world. The keen ear, the attentive mind, and the patience to listen deeply can reveal truths hidden in plain sight. In a time when the clamor of swords and armor often dominates history, the quiet heroism of those like the blind musician offers a different melody. One of subtlety, courage, and the intricate dance of shadows and light. As the lute's soft notes fade into the evening air, imagine the countless paths his footsteps traced. Through winding alleys, across fields golden with harvest, beneath the towering battlements that guarded realms. Each step a testament to a life lived in service to a silent, unseen cause. And so, the blind musician moves on, his story carried in whispers and songs, a reminder that in the folds of history, sometimes the quietest voices hold the deepest truths. The herbalist who poised as a healer but served the throne. Imagine yourself in a world where kingdoms rose and fell on whispers carried by couriers, where the smallest detail could shift the balance of power in a court thick with intrigue. In this delicate dance of diplomacy and deception, even healers, figures often thought to be neutral, sometimes played roles far beyond their modest reputation. Today, we explore the curious case of a herbalist who traveled not simply to mend wounds or soothe fevers, but to serve as an unseen instrument of political strategy. Sent as a gift to enemy courts, this healer offered her talents wrapped in the guise of goodwill. Yet beneath the surface, her presence was a carefully woven thread in the larger fabric of espionage. In medieval and early modern Europe, as well as across various Asian and Middle Eastern courts, the role of the healer was often intertwined with both science and superstition. These practitioners cultivated extensive knowledge of plants, roots, and salves, an expertise that commanded respect, for illness and injury were constant companions of daily life. Yet, in courts where suspicion was never far from the surface, a healer's trustworthiness could be as ambiguous as the shadows that gathered at dusk. The herbalist in question was dispatched by a king who understood the subtle art of influence. Unlike a messenger who carried letters, or a spy who slipped through the dark, this healer moved openly, bearing gifts of salves and tonics meant to calm ailments, reduce pain, and ease discomfort. To the receiving court, her presence was a gesture of peace or alliance, an offer of friendship wrapped in the scent of crushed herbs and fragrant oils. Imagine the room she entered. The heavy drapes muffling distant footsteps, the polished wood gleaming softly in candlelight, the faint aroma of medicinal herbs mingling with the warmth of human presence. Courtiers paused their quiet conversations to observe her. A woman who carried with her the promise of relief, yet also an air of mystery. Her hands were steady and assured as she prepared her concoctions, grinding roots to powder, mixing essences into potions that shimmered with subtle hues. Yet, these remedies were not always as benign as they seemed. The tonics she administered were known to dull the mind, to cloud judgment just enough that those who drank them became less certain of their own decisions. Not overt poisons, but gentle veils cast over clarity, allowing subtle influence to creep like mist over a landscape at dawn. While the patients rested, perhaps lulled into a state of ease by the faint bitterness of the herbal draft, the herbalist observed. Her keen eyes noted the layout of the chambers, the comings and goings of important figures, the whispered conversations she could catch in passing. The information she gathered was passed back to her sovereign through discreet channels, a steady stream of intelligence that undermined rivals more effectively than armies or open diplomacy. It is important to imagine the rhythm of her days, the careful balance of healer and spy, trusted by some, unknown to others, always walking a delicate line. She navigated palace corridors as a shadow might glide beneath a moonlit sky. Visible yet unnoticed, an ever-present thread woven through the tapestry of court life. Her reports detailed more than just the spoken words she overheard. They recorded the smallest changes in behavior, the hesitation in a ruler's greeting, the subtle signs of illness that might weaken a foe, the arrival of envoys whose intentions remained unclear. Each piece of information was a fragment, but together they formed a picture that shaped the decisions of kings. The king who sent her understood that the power of knowledge was sometimes greater than the sword. By sowing uncertainty and influencing the health and clarity of opposing courts, he wielded control not through open conflict, but through a quiet hand guiding unseen forces. This strategy was not unique to one time or place. Throughout history, rulers have used healers and other figures of trust as agents to gather intelligence. The blending of healing arts and espionage reminds us that the boundaries between care and control, between medicine and manipulation, can be delicate and complex. Imagine, too, the personal cost to the herbalist herself. To serve two masters, the one she healed and the one she served, was a life lived in subtle contradiction. Her knowledge of plants that could restore life was matched by her understanding of how to cloud minds, how to shift the unseen currents of power. The quiet strength required to maintain this dual role was immense, as she balanced the tangible relief of a poultice against the intangible sway of secrets whispered behind closed doors. In the end, the story of this herbalist is a reminder that even the gentlest touch, whether the soothing of a fever or the quiet nudging of a ruler's decisions, can carry weight far beyond what it seems. The world of kings and courts was never simply about open battles or grand proclamations, but also about the soft murmurs of trust and the silent exchange of information. So, as you imagine yourself in the flickering candlelight of an ancient palace, watching a healer move through shadowed halls, consider how the simplest act of care might also be an act of power. And in the quiet unfolding of these moments, history often turned, one whispered secret at a time. The sewer tunnel architect who built invasion routes. Imagine yourself standing in the shadow of a sprawling medieval castle, its towering walls rising like a fortress against the sky, its battlements tracing a jagged silhouette that seems to hold centuries of secrets. Beneath your feet, hidden deep in the earth, runs a network of tunnels and channels, invisible to the casual observer. These passages were designed to carry away the refuse of daily life, the waste that gathered silently and unseen, far from the eyes of the castle's inhabitants. Yet, beneath this ordinary function of sanitation lies a story rarely told. A tale of secret passages carved with care and cunning, pathways that changed the course of sieges and wars. This is the story of the sewer tunnel architect, a figure whose official duty masked a far more clandestine purpose. In the medieval world, sanitation was a constant concern, especially within the walls of castles. The bustling daily life of soldiers, servants, nobles, and tradespeople produced waste that needed to be managed. Open sewers, cesspits, and rudimentary drainage systems were common, but within castles, more sophisticated means were often employed. The sewer tunnels were narrow, damp, and thick with the scent of earth and stone, running beneath kitchens, stables, and living quarters. They provided essential hygiene and helped preserve the fragile health of those within. The architects responsible for designing these subterranean channels were often skilled engineers, versed not only in the principles of water flow, but also in the challenges posed by confined spaces and structural integrity. Now, imagine one such architect, employed by a powerful lord to maintain and expand the castle's waste channels. His daily task was to oversee the flow of water and refuse, ensuring the tunnels remained clear and functional. But beneath this mundane role, he quietly worked on secret maps, drafting hidden corridors that extended beyond the official sewer routes. These were narrow passages carved with precision, running beneath walls and moats, designed to allow discreet movement. His knowledge of the castle's underbelly, its twists, turns, and dead ends, was unmatched. To the castle's inhabitants, he was simply the man who kept their halls clean. To those in the know, he was a master of unseen routes, a keeper of secrets. The function of these hidden tunnels was twofold. On the surface, they facilitated basic hygiene. Underneath, they became vital conduits for covert operations. In times of siege or conflict, when armies gathered outside thick stone walls, attackers and defenders alike sought any advantage. Castles were built to be impregnable, but the labyrinth beneath offered a less obvious path. Loyal forces, guided by the architect's maps, could slip unseen through these passageways, appearing behind enemy lines or within the very heart of the besieged fortress. The tunnels allowed messengers to pass unnoticed, supplies to be smuggled in, and surprise attacks to be launched from unexpected quarters. Consider, for a moment, the practical challenges of such a role. The architect had to balance his official duties with the secret work of carving and mapping. Every new channel had to blend seamlessly with the existing system, avoiding detection. The walls had to be sturdy, the ceilings just high enough for a person to crawl, and the passages narrow enough to discourage unwanted exploration. The scent of damp earth and stone was ever present, mingling with the faint echoes of dripping water and distant footsteps. He needed to know the castle's layout intimately, not only its grandeur, but its hidden faults and vulnerabilities. The knowledge he carried was dangerous, and the trust placed upon him immense. Over time, these hidden networks became part of the castle's living fabric, a shadow beneath the stone. Their existence was whispered among a trusted few, guards, loyal knights, and sometimes the Lord himself. In one well-documented example, during a protracted siege, defenders used such a passage to launch a surprise sortie, catching besiegers off guard and forcing a retreat. The architect's maps, passed hand to hand in secrecy, guided small groups through twisting tunnels that emerged behind enemy camps. The advantage was often decisive, changing the rhythm of warfare from brute force to subtle strategy. Yet, the work was never without risk. The damp, cramped tunnels were physically demanding to navigate, requiring a steady hand and calm breath. The ever-present threat of discovery meant silence was imperative. A single misstep could lead to collapse or capture, and the consequences were grave. Despite this, the sewer tunnel architect moved through the shadow world with a quiet confidence of one who understood its contours and secrets. His work blurred the lines between the mundane and the extraordinary, between the everyday necessity of cleanliness and the high stakes of survival. Beyond the practical, there was a symbolic dimension to these hidden routes. Castles were symbols of power and protection, but their foundations were built upon these secret veins, dark, unseen, but vital. The tunnels represented a hidden undercurrent of resilience, the possibility that even in the face of overwhelming force, there were paths to freedom and resistance. They reminded those within that not all was as it seemed, that beneath the surface, the castle breathed with a secret life. As you imagine yourself tracing the rough-hewn stone walls of these tunnels, sensing the cool dampness that clings to the air, you might also consider the quiet ingenuity of the architect who carved these routes. His was a work of patience and subtlety, shaping space not for grandeur or display, but for survival and strategy. In a world often defined by open battle and visible strength, his tunnels were a reminder of the power of the unseen, the value of knowledge, and the endless adaptability of human beings in the face of challenge. The story of the sewer tunnel architect is not widely told, but it offers a unique lens into medieval life and warfare. It reveals how the practical concerns of sanitation intersected with the clandestine necessities of conflict, how everyday roles could hold extraordinary significance. It encourages us to look beneath the surface of history, to listen for the quiet whispers of stone corridors and shadowed passages. In these hidden spaces, the rhythm of lives played out in silence and secrecy, an unbroken thread running through centuries of stone, earth, and human ingenuity. So the next time you find yourself near an ancient fortress or castle ruins, imagine the labyrinth below, the narrow tunnels, the faint echoes of movement, the scent of damp stone. Remember the architect who drew maps not just of water and waste, but of secret hope and unseen escape. His legacy, carved in shadow, remains a quiet testament to the resilience hidden beneath the stones we see, and the lives lived in the spaces just beyond our sight. The religious relic that contained a poison dart mechanism. Imagine yourself standing in a dimly lit chamber deep within a medieval palace, the air thick with the scent of old wood and faint traces of incense. Before you lies a revered object, a religious relic said to embody the spiritual essence of a kingdom, cradled in gold and velvet, shimmering softly under flickering candlelight. This sacred artifact is not only a symbol of faith, but a vessel of power, respected and protected by those who serve the throne. Yet beneath its solemn beauty, it conceals a secret far from the peaceful devotion one might expect. In several royal courts throughout history, relics like these were much more than devotional objects. They were intertwined with the fragile balance of courtly intrigue and the precarious dance of loyalty and betrayal. Among such treasures, there existed a particular artifact, an object so sacred and esteemed that even the humblest courtier would tremble to approach it. This relic, reputedly blessed by saints and enshrined with holy rites, bore a hidden defense, a delicate, concealed poison dart mechanism designed to activate upon contact by an unauthorized hand. The concept of this hidden trap may seem paradoxical at first. How could something so revered, meant to inspire reverence and piety, double as a deadly snare? Yet, in the complicated world of medieval courts, where suspicion simmered beneath gilded surfaces, trust was scarce, and power was often protected by subtle violence. The relic was both a trophy and a warning, a test of worthiness and an instrument of silent justice. Imagine yourself touching the relic, your fingers brushing its smooth surface, only for a nearly invisible mechanism to spring to life, releasing a minute dart tipped with poison, swiftly marking an unfortunate intruder. This trap was not designed for common thieves, but for those whose ambitions might challenge the ruler's dominion from within. The origins of such defensive craftsmanship are rooted in the interplay between religious devotion and political survival. The relics themselves often contained fragments of saints' bones, ancient scriptures, or consecrated objects believed to carry divine protection. These treasures were displayed publicly during important ceremonies, paraded through crowds, or kept in ornate shrines accessible only to the most trusted. Yet the same reverence that attracted admirers also drew envious eyes and schemers. The subtle installation of hidden defenses was a precaution born of necessity, a reminder that the spiritual and temporal realms were often inseparable in maintaining order. Delving deeper into the mechanics, the poison dart mechanism was typically crafted by skilled artisans, masters of metalwork and clockmaking, who had knowledge of miniature traps often employed in the construction of jewelry or small locks. Concealed beneath the gilded casing or embedded within the wooden frame, a tension spring was held in place by a trigger sensitive to pressure or movement. When touched incorrectly, or without proper ritualistic handling, the trap released a tiny, almost silent dart. This projectile was coated with a fast-acting but subtle poison, enough to incapacitate or kill quietly, leaving no spectacle for the court to witness. The use of such hidden defenses in religious relics reflects a broader theme in medieval and early modern courts. Where power was often fragile and loyalty shifting, elaborate precautions extended beyond soldiers and walls to the very symbols of authority themselves. The court was a theater of intrigue, where enemies could be cloaked as friends, and death could come from the most unexpected places. The relic, simultaneously a sacred emblem and a silent executioner, embodied this duality perfectly. Consider the social context surrounding this artifact. Kings and nobles often surrounded themselves with advisors, courtiers, and even family members whose ambitions sometimes ran counter to the ruler's wishes. A misplaced touch of a sacred relic could serve as a discreet but effective warning, or a means to swiftly remove a political threat without open conflict. The relic's deadly secret was an invisible line, a boundary between sanctity and treachery. Imagine the tension in the chamber as courtiers approached it, their steps measured, their hands cautious, knowing that a single misstep could be their last. At the same time, these relics played a vital role in reinforcing the religious and political order. The sacred nature of the artifact elevated the king's legitimacy, presenting him as a chosen ruler under divine protection. The hidden trap, while a practical defense, also acted as a metaphor, suggesting that the divine was not only merciful, but also just and vigilant, guarding against corruption and betrayal. The intertwining of faith and fear created a complex atmosphere in which devotion was inseparable from caution. Across history, similar artifacts have been recorded in different cultures, each reflecting their unique blend of spirituality and political necessity. From the reliquaries of medieval Europe to the guarded talismans of Asian courts, the presence of concealed defenses speaks to a universal human desire to protect what is sacred from the unseen threats of the world. These relics were not merely passive objects of worship, but active participants in the rhythm of court life, both symbols and sentinels. The interplay between reverence and danger in such an artifact also reveals much about the experience of those who lived within these courts. Imagine yourself as a courtier, navigating the elaborate rituals and unspoken rules, knowing that objects meant to inspire faith might also harbor deadly surprises. This constant undercurrent of tension shaped daily life, influencing behavior, alliances, and the very way power was wielded and perceived. In sum, the religious relic with its poison dart mechanism serves as a window into the layered realities of medieval power and piety. It shows us that in an age where spiritual authority was deeply entwined with political might, the boundaries between sanctity and survival were often blurred. The relic was a beautiful, sacred object, a beacon of faith and legitimacy, but also a trap, a reminder that power demanded vigilance, and that in the delicate dance of courtly life, appearances could deceive, and even the holiest things could harbor hidden dangers. So, as you reflect on this tale, imagine yourself once more in that quiet chamber, where light and shadow mingle, where faith and fear intertwine. The relic rests silently, a shimmering enigma, both a treasure to behold and a silent sentinel, guarding secrets only the bold or the foolish would dare to uncover. The war trumpet that summoned only certain fighters. Imagine yourself standing on the edge of a vast battlefield, the air thick with anticipation and the faint scent of damp earth rising from trampled soil. Amid the hum of quiet preparation, a sound suddenly pierces the stillness, the call of a war trumpet. But this is no ordinary signal, no mere fanfare to rally common soldiers. Instead, it is a carefully composed sequence of notes, woven together like a secret code only understood by a select few. The war trumpet has long been a symbol of power and command, its blast echoing across hills and valleys to marshal forces and mark the tides of battle. To the untrained ear, its call might seem ceremonial, a ritual that signals the beginning of combat or a change in tactics. Yet, beneath this surface lies a complex language, an acoustic cipher that could summon an elite force dispersed across distant regions. Warriors trained to respond instantly and without hesitation. Imagine a time when armies were less centralized than we might assume today. In sprawling kingdoms or loosely allied territories, maintaining rapid communication and coordinated action across miles of rugged landscape posed a formidable challenge. Without modern means of messaging, commanders had to rely on signals that transcended spoken words, reaching ears attuned to hidden meanings in sound. The war trumpet filled this crucial role, its notes crafted into sequences designed to convey specific commands. These sequences were memorized by elite guards who lived scattered among local populations, often blending into the daily rhythms of rural life or city bustle. When the trumpet sounded the secret call, these warriors would rise from obscurity, converging swiftly to perform duties that could turn the tide of conflict. The training of these elite guards was exacting and discreet. Imagine them moving through shadowed forests or quiet villages, their presence unnoticed by common folk, yet their minds finely tuned to the war trumpet's coded language. Their readiness depended on intense discipline, a constant alertness to the subtle variations in pitch and rhythm that carried hidden orders. This was a bond between sound and action, a form of communication so refined it required both mastery and trust. This system offered several advantages. For one, it maintained secrecy. Enemies might hear the trumpet, but fail to decipher its meaning, mistaking it for a routine call. For another, it allowed rapid mobilization without the need for messengers, who could be intercepted or delayed. The war trumpet's notes traveled swiftly across fields and forests, summoning those who held the knowledge to respond immediately. Consider the psychological impact of such a call. To those elite fighters, the trumpet signal was more than sound. It was a summons to duty, a call they had internalized through rigorous training. The moment the notes rang out, a transformation occurred. The ordinary man or woman became a part of a hidden order, bound by loyalty and purpose. This instant recognition forged unity among individuals separated by distance, creating a force both cohesive and mysterious. Ceremonial aspects of the trumpet added to its effectiveness. Publicly, it served as a symbol of authority and tradition, a ritual embedded in festivals and courtly occasions. Privately, its coded sequences operated beneath this veneer, a practical tool of warcraft and strategy. The interplay between appearance and reality was deliberate, designed to conceal the true power of the call from all, but those intended to hear it. Throughout history, similar signaling systems have been recorded across cultures. From the horn calls of medieval Europe to the bugle signals of ancient armies, sound played a vital role in organizing fighters and conveying commands. The war trumpet described here is a refined example of this tradition. a bridge between the visible world of ceremony and the invisible network of covert mobilization. The reliance on auditory signals also connected deeply to the environment. Imagine the trumpet's notes carried by the wind, passing over fields where farmers worked, along winding roads where merchants traveled, and into dense woods where hunters waited. This natural dispersal made the call difficult to suppress, its sound weaving through the landscape like a living thread. Yet this system was not without limitations. Weather could muffle or distort the sound. Distance posed natural barriers, and the risk of misinterpretation always lingered. For this reason, the sequences had to be precise and the training meticulous. Every note, every pause held meaning, requiring the elite guards to maintain constant vigilance. Over time, as technologies evolved and centralized armies grew, such auditory codes gave way to more advanced forms of communication. Still, the legacy of the war trumpet remains a testament to human ingenuity. The ability to transform sound into a language of action, to summon hidden allies across vast distances with nothing more than a sequence of notes. Imagine now the final moments of such a call. The trumpet's last clear note fading into the evening air, answered by footsteps rising from the shadows. The elite guards assemble silently, their presence a quiet but formidable force poised to shape the unfolding conflict. Their response, swift and sure, rests on the trust embedded in those notes. A trust carried through time, whispered on the wind. This story invites reflection on the subtle yet powerful ways sound has shaped human history. It reminds us that beyond words and written commands, there exist hidden languages, signals crafted in melody and rhythm, designed to connect and command in times of uncertainty. The war trumpet's call is one such language, a reminder that even in the chaos of war, order and meaning can be found in the echoes of a distant horn. The royal cook who altered food based on loyalty tests. Imagine yourself stepping into a vast, echoing hall within the stone walls of a medieval castle. The air is thick with the mingling scents of burning wood, aged stone, and the faintest hint of exotic spices carried from distant lands. The flicker of candlelight casts long shadows on tapestries woven with stories of battles and kings long past. Here, beneath grand arches and amidst richly carved tables, the royal kitchen hums quietly, a world apart yet deeply intertwined with the fate of kingdoms. In this hidden realm, a figure moves with practiced grace, the royal cook. More than a mere preparer of food, this person holds a power often overlooked. A power not just to nourish, but to influence, to test, and in subtle ways, to control. Food in the royal court was never simply sustenance. Each meal was a ritual, a symbol of status and allegiance, a carefully choreographed performance where every ingredient, every flavor, held meaning. The cook's skill lay not only in the art of taste, but in the nuanced language of herbs and spices, some known for their restorative qualities, others for their ability to induce weariness or confusion. Imagine yourself sitting at the heavy oak table, a polished goblet of wine catching the dim light as a platter is set before you. The dish appears rich and inviting, yet beneath its surface lies a subtle message. The cook has carefully adjusted the blend of herbs, perhaps a sprig of rosemary here, known to sharpen the mind, or a dash of bitter wormwood there, said to dull the senses. This was no accident, but a deliberate choice, a culinary cipher. In those times, loyalty was a fragile thread stretched taut across courts filled with intrigue and shifting alliances. The king's advisors and nobles constantly watched one another, seeking signs of betrayal or unwavering devotion. The royal cook became a silent agent in this delicate dance. By altering the flavors and effects of the meal, the cook could gauge a guest's reaction, measure their stamina, or subtly influence their mood. For some, the meal invigorated the body and mind, encouraging clarity and alertness, signaling favor or trust. For others, it was designed to weary or confuse, to dull the senses just enough to reveal cracks in their composure or loyalty. These tests were subtle and often undetectable, woven seamlessly into the fabric of courtly life. The knowledge and application of such herbs were passed down through generations, often shrouded in secrecy. The royal cook had to be both a skilled chef and a master of court politics, understanding not only flavors but the personalities seated at the table. A whispered warning here, a fleeting glance there, and the right blend of ingredients could either bind a noble to the crown or expose a hidden adversary. Imagine the tension beneath the polished surfaces, the hushed conversations, the strategic glances exchanged over carved wooden goblets. Every bite could reveal truths far beyond taste. Yet, this power was wielded with discretion. The cook's role was to maintain the balance between suspicion and trust, to keep the fragile peace of the court intact. The meals were never overt weapons, but subtle instruments, capable of shifting moods or weakening resolve without raising alarm. Outside the grand halls, the kingdom's fate often hinged on such quiet influences. Wars were won and lost not only on the battlefield, but within the walls where loyalty was tested at dinner. The royal cook's silent hand shaped outcomes in ways the history books rarely record. Despite the weight of their influence, the cooks themselves remained largely unseen by history, their names lost to time like the secret recipes they guarded. Their legacy survives only in the faintest hints, tales whispered in court corridors, the lingering taste of a meal that was more than it seemed. So, next time you savor a meal, imagine the layers beyond flavor. The hidden meanings, the silent signals, the delicate dance of power and trust. In the shadows of medieval courts, the royal cook was not just a provider of food, but a keeper of secrets, an unseen player in the timeless game of loyalty. And as the candles gutter low, the kitchen quiets, and the last dish is cleared away, the cook's work continues in silence, shaping history one subtle seasoning at a time. The false tomb built to hide a living strategist. Imagine yourself standing before a grand tomb, its towering stone walls weathered by centuries, etched with carvings that speak of honor and legacy. To any passerby, this tomb is the final resting place of a revered war tactician, a man whose mind shaped battles and whose name echoed through kingdoms. Yet, behind its imposing facade lies a secret that defies the very idea of death. In an era when warfare was as much about deception as it was about steel and shields, rulers relied not only on soldiers, but also on the minds that guided them. The strategist whose tomb you see was no ordinary commander. His intellect was a weapon as sharp as any sword, capable of turning tides and weaving intricate plans that kept enemies off balance. When news of his death spread, kingdoms mourned, banners were lowered, and ceremonies filled the air with solemn chants. A magnificent tomb was erected in his honor, crafted with care, adorned with symbols of valor and loyalty. The sarcophagus lay at the heart of the chamber, its lid sealed with solemn reverence, a symbol of closure and rest. But imagine, just beneath the carved stone, secret chambers that defied this closure. Hidden passageways concealed behind false walls. Small rooms designed not for mourning, but for living thought and strategy. Within these hidden spaces, the strategist continued his work in silence and shadow, surrounded by maps, scrolls, and trusted aides who carried messages in whispers. Life in these chambers was a constant study in patience and quiet determination. The strategist, though cloaked in the guise of death, remained ever vigilant. The world outside believed him gone, and this invisibility became his greatest advantage. From this concealed refuge, he planned new campaigns, analyzed shifting alliances, and prepared to shape the future without the constraints of public scrutiny. Picture the dim glow of oil lamps flickering against cold stone walls, the scent of parchment and ink mixing with the faint, earthy smell of the tomb's enclosure. The air was heavy with anticipation and secrecy. Every sound from above, a footstep, a distant voice, was a reminder that this hidden existence balanced on the edge of discovery. The purpose of such a false death and secret burial was not merely survival, but strategy writ large. By convincing friend and foe alike that the mind behind their victories was lost, the strategist removed himself from immediate threat. Opponents might relax, reconsider their moves, or fall into complacency, unaware that the hand guiding the unseen player was as active as ever. This ruse echoes through history in various forms. Leaders and advisors have sometimes feigned death or vanished into shadow to outwit their enemies or protect their influence. The false tomb is an extreme embodiment of this idea, a place designed not for rest, but for renewal of plans and power. Imagine, too, the solitude that accompanied this secret life. While surrounded by loyal confidants, the strategist's world was confined to stone walls and whispered conversations. The rhythm of his days was dictated by the movement of couriers, the shifting lines on maps, and the slow passage of time measured not by sunlight, but by the flicker of a flame. Yet, despite this isolation, his mind remained active, adapting and evolving. This hidden existence blurred the line between life and death, presence and absence. To the world outside, he was a memory, a legend sealed beneath heavy stone. But inside, he was very much alive, an unseen force shaping the destinies of armies and kingdoms. The story of the false tomb reminds us that history often holds surprises beneath its surface. Sometimes, the greatest battles were fought not in open fields, but in quiet chambers where minds met in silent contest. The strategist's legacy is a testament to the power of cunning and the lengths to which those who hold knowledge will go to protect and wield it. So as you imagine yourself near that ancient tomb, feel the weight of stone and silence, and consider the invisible life that thrived beneath. A life dedicated to the endless pursuit of strategy, survival, and influence. In this space between death and secrecy, history quietly turned, one whispered plan at a time. The hunting horn used to control a trained attack deer. Imagine yourself standing at the edge of a dense forest, where the air is thick with the scent of pine and damp earth. The soft rustling of leaves blends with distant bird calls. Yet beneath this calm lies a story both curious and unusual, one of a hunting horn that commanded not only men, but a trained attack deer. This was no ordinary stag wandering the woods. It was a creature shaped by human hands and sounds, a symbol of wildness harnessed and turned into a weapon of surprise and strategy. In medieval hunting and warfare, animals were often companions, tools, or even weapons. Horses carried knights into battle. Falcons soared to snatch prey from the sky, and dogs tracked the scent of game. Yet the idea of training a deer, a creature known for its swift flight and cautious nature, to become an active participant in conflict is remarkably rare. The hunting horn, a long, curved instrument made of polished brass or wood, served as a medium of communication, its notes carrying across forests and fields, signaling hunters and hounds alike. The stag, although outwardly resembling any wild deer, was carefully conditioned to respond to specific horn blasts. Imagine the patient hours spent with this animal, forging a bond between beast and handler, where a particular note meant charge, a sudden rush forward aimed at scattering foes or breaking lines. The deer was treated with a mix of care and discipline, as both prey and participant. Its natural grace and power were harnessed and focused into a tactical advantage rarely seen on the medieval battlefield. One account tells of a war council convened in a clearing near a fortress. As nobles and commanders debated strategy beneath the open sky, the sudden blast of the hunting horn shattered the tense calm. At that precise note, the trained stag charged into the council's midst, antlers lowered, hooves pounding the soft earth. The scene descended into chaos. Men scrambled, horses reared, and the unexpected presence of the animal created confusion and fear. This sudden assault was not merely a spectacle. It was a deliberate act of psychological warfare, leveraging nature's unpredictability to unbalance human plans. The sound of the horn itself was a marvel, clear, resonant, and capable of carrying through thick forests or open fields. Each note was carefully crafted to convey commands, understandable only to the trained animal and its handler. The relationship between the hunter and the stag was intimate and subtle, built on repetition and trust. Unlike conventional war animals, this stag's presence introduced an element of wild unpredictability, a living embodiment of nature's raw force controlled by human intention. Training such an animal required deep knowledge of behavior and patience. The deer's instincts toward caution and flight had to be tempered by consistent signals and rewards. The stag learned to recognize the horn's command as a cue to move forward with purpose, not to flee. This blending of taming and wildness blurred the lines between domestic and wild, between control and freedom. The stag was both a creature of the forest and an instrument of war. Beyond the moment of the war council's disruption, the use of a trained attack deer hints at a broader medieval understanding of animals in warfare, not only as mounts or weapons, but as psychological tools. The sudden appearance of an unusual threat could unsettle even the most disciplined troops. The stag's charge was a reminder that not all dangers were predictable, that sometimes the unexpected came with 4 hooves and antlers, summoned by a haunting call on a hunting horn. Imagine the rustle of leaves as the stag slipped through the underbrush, the sudden blast echoing like a clarion call, and the startled gasps of men who found themselves scattered by a creature they had never anticipated as an adversary. The blend of nature's beauty and power, shaped by human ingenuity, created moments that defied the ordinary rhythm of battle and diplomacy. This story, while unusual, invites reflection on the many ways medieval societies used animals, not just for labor or sustenance, but for complex roles that merged survival, symbolism, and strategy. The hunting horn and its trained stag represent an intersection of music, animal behavior, and military cunning. It is a testament to the creativity with which people sought advantage in uncertain times. So, as you picture the scene, allow yourself to drift through the forest sounds, to hear the horn's call rising above the rustling branches, and to see the stag emerging, powerful, poised, and purposeful, reminding all who witness that even the wildest creatures could be drawn into the quiet strategies that shaped medieval life. The crown jewels that hid microscopic map engravings. Imagine yourself in the hushed stillness of a royal treasury, where the faint glimmer of candlelight dances softly across polished surfaces, and the heavy scent of aged wood mingles with the faintest hint of beeswax. Before you lies a collection of glittering crown jewels, gems that have dazzled generations, worn by monarchs whose names echo through history. Each jewel is a masterpiece, a radiant symbol of authority and divine right. But beyond their sparkling allure, these precious stones hold a secret nearly invisible to all but the most privileged eyes. In some of the most guarded courts of history, crown jewels were more than mere ornaments. They were emblems of power, carefully crafted to conceal subtle messages and strategic knowledge. Among these hidden treasures, certain gems were engraved beneath their polished surfaces with microscopic battle maps, etched with a precision so fine that only the king and a trusted few could decipher their meaning by the flickering light of a candle. The technique to create such delicate engravings was an extraordinary feat of craftsmanship. Skilled artisans wielded diamond-tipped needles, tools capable of inscribing lines thinner than a hair's breadth onto the underside or edge of gemstones like sapphires, rubies, and diamonds. These minute maps depicted strategic layouts, winding roads, fortified castles, river crossings, and troop placements. To the untrained eye, the jewels shimmered only with the natural brilliance of cut stone. Yet in certain angles of light, those in the know could trace the faint, almost ghostly lines revealing vital intelligence. Imagine the moment the king held such a jewel under candlelight. The flame's soft glow would catch on the engraved paths, the subtle etchings coming alive in the shadows and light, like a secret landscape revealed. Only those in the inner circle, sworn to loyalty and trained in this arcane skill, would understand the silent language hidden within these precious stones. The maps were never written down openly, for fear that enemies might intercept or decipher the plans. Instead, they remained embedded in the very objects that symbolized rule itself, unassailable, elegant, and discreet. This practice exemplifies the merging of artistry, secrecy, and political strategy in royal courts. The crown jewels served multiple purposes: symbols of the monarch's divine right, objects of ceremonial grandeur, and covert repositories of critical military information. By embedding maps within the jewels, the king could carry essential knowledge at all times, safe from spies and hostile forces. The treasures became living documents of the realm's vulnerabilities and strengths, whispering their secrets only to the right eyes. The social dynamics surrounding these jewels further illuminate their significance. Court life was a complex game of appearances, loyalties, and silent rivalries. The possession of such a jewel was not only a mark of favor, but a responsibility, a silent pact to guard the realm's secrets. Courtiers who glimpsed these gems knew they held more than mere wealth. They carried the weight of strategy and survival. Imagine the trust placed in the few who could read the maps, their very lives intertwined with the security of the kingdom. Beyond the technical mastery and intrigue, these hidden engravings reveal something deeper about the nature of power in historical times. Knowledge was as valuable as gold, and the ability to conceal and communicate it discreetly could turn the tide of war or preserve a fragile peace. The crown jewels, gleaming with their microscopic secrets, embodied this delicate balance. They stood as glittering monuments to authority, yet beneath their surface lay a quiet testament to vigilance and cunning. The legacy of these engraved jewels invites reflection on the unseen layers beneath what we admire. Just as a gemstone's true beauty is often hidden in its depth and clarity, so too are the histories of power layered with hidden stories. Secrets carved in silence, maps etched in light and shadow. The crown jewels with their microscopic maps remind us that history is not only in grand battles and proclamations, but also in the subtle craftsmanship of those who wove secrecy into beauty. So, as you picture yourself once more in that dim treasury, the candle flickering low, the jewel shimmering with concealed knowledge, consider the interplay of light and shadow, art and strategy, trust and caution. These tiny maps etched beneath radiant stones are more than mere curiosities. They are echoes of a time when power was guarded with brilliance and subtlety, forever hidden in the sparkle of a king's crown. The puppet troupe that distracted during spy extraction. Imagine yourself in the grand halls of a medieval castle, where the flickering glow of chandeliers casts long shadows upon tapestries woven with stories of conquest and lineage. The air is thick with the aroma of spiced wine and roasting meats, and the murmur of noble voices blends with the soft clinking of goblets. Yet, beneath this veneer of celebration, a carefully orchestrated performance is unfolding, not merely for amusement, but as a crucial part of a delicate operation. The puppet troupe that performed during royal feasts was far more than a simple entertainment act. These skilled performers played a vital role in the shadowed dance of espionage and statecraft. Their shows were designed not only to delight, but to command attention, to draw the gaze of nobles and courtiers away from areas where spies were stealthily escorted through the labyrinthine kitchens and hidden passages of the castle. Imagine the precision behind such an arrangement. The puppet master, a figure of quiet authority and immense influence, choreographed each movement and tale with exacting detail. Every gesture of the wooden figures, every burst of laughter from the audience, served to mask the silent footsteps of those whose mission was far more perilous than any play. The puppeteers became guardians of secrecy, weaving distraction into their craft. The leader of this troupe occupied a position of surprising importance. Paid more generously than many military generals, his role was a testament to the high stakes involved in espionage. His livelihood depended on the success of these covert operations, and his artistry was inseparable from the security of the realm. Imagine the weight resting on his shoulders as he balanced creativity with cunning, ensuring that no curious eyes drifted toward the hidden corridors where spies moved unseen. The art of distraction was meticulously crafted. The puppet shows featured intricate stories, sometimes echoing popular legends or royal myths, carefully chosen to captivate the imagination of the court. The nobles, engrossed in the delicate manipulation of puppets and the clever humor threaded through the performances, were less likely to notice the subtle signals and secret movements taking place just beyond their view. Within the hustle of the kitchens, spies moved quietly, shielded by the cheerful chaos the troupe created. The sense of fresh bread and roasting game masked their passage, and the constant flow of servants and cooks provided a natural cover. Imagine the careful choreography not just on stage but behind the scenes. A network of trusted aides and servants who guided these agents safely to their destinations. This use of performance as a cloak for espionage reveals a fascinating interplay between art and politics. It underscores how culture and statecraft often intertwined, each influencing the other in unexpected ways. The puppet troupe was not merely a source of amusement, but a living tool in the complex machinery of power. Moreover, this arrangement highlights the subtle strategies employed in royal courts, where appearances were carefully managed and every gesture held meaning. The noble's attention was a valuable resource, one that could be directed, manipulated, or diverted to serve hidden purposes. The puppet shows were a masterclass in this art, transforming light-hearted entertainment into a strategic advantage. The leader's elevated status also reflects the value placed on such covert operations. In a world where wars were often decided by secrets whispered in shadows, those who mastered the art of misdirection could wield power rivaling that of generals on the battlefield. Imagine a world where the success of a spy's extraction depended as much on a flick of a puppet's hand as on the swing of a sword. As the evening wore on and the final act of the puppet show drew to a close, the nobles' laughter and applause masked the quiet departure of spies, slipping through hidden doors and shadowed corridors. The performance concluded, and the troupe disappeared behind the scenes, their work unseen but vital. The delicate balance between spectacle and secrecy had been maintained, and the realm remained safe, at least for another night. Reflecting on this, one might consider the many unseen roles that contribute to the shaping of history. Not all power is wielded openly. Often, it hides behind curtains, in whispered signals, and in the deft movements of those who know how to command attention while the true actors move unseen. The puppet troupe reminds us that even the simplest of arts can become instruments of great consequence, shaping destinies in silence and shadow. Imagine yourself in that hall, eyes drawn to the lively dance of puppets, unaware that behind the laughter, history is quietly unfolding. The spectacle and the secret intertwined, creating a world where distraction was not merely diversion, but survival. The chessboard with pieces that recorded council strategy. Imagine yourself in a dimly lit chamber deep within a medieval castle. The flickering glow of torches casts gentle shadows on the stone walls, while the air holds the faint scent of aged wood and wax. In the center of the room stands a heavy table, its surface worn smooth by years of use. Upon it rests an object that seems ordinary at first glance. A chessboard, with finely carved pieces arranged as if mid-game. Yet beneath this familiar game lies a secret both ingenious and silent. This was no simple board for pastime or leisure. Crafted with remarkable skill and subtlety, the chessboard was a covert device, a vault for military strategy, designed to record and reveal the plans discussed behind closed doors. The board's surface held magnetic inlays, so finely embedded that not even the most attentive eye could discern their presence. The pieces themselves, weighted with lead, were more than mere pawns and knights. They served as vessels for information. Each movement, each placement, encoded fragments of war simulations, tactics, and council deliberations. It was a tool that allowed commanders and kings to visualize complex strategies without exposing their secrets to prying eyes. Imagine the council gathered around this chessboard. Lords and generals whispered in hushed tones as they arranged the pieces, their moves echoing real troop placements and battle formations. The game was a living map, a representation of far-flung armies and contested territories. Yet unlike a traditional map, this board could record the strategies in a way that could be hidden, stored, and reviewed at will. The magnetic inlays beneath the polished would interact silently with the lead-filled pieces. When a piece was moved, the board captured the position through subtle magnetic fields. These arrangements could be later decoded by those trained in the secret art. A silent archive of conflict, preserved in wood and metal. This innovation allowed the king's trusted strategists to plan campaigns in secrecy. Written parchments were vulnerable to interception or destruction, but the chessboard was a quiet confidant. It revealed the flow of battle through its enduring presence, without a single word spoken aloud. The genius of this device lay in its elegance and disguise. Chess was a game familiar to nobles and commoners alike, a pastime that invited no suspicion. To an outsider, the council sessions might seem mere entertainment, a leisurely contest of minds. But within this quiet game lay the pulse of a kingdom's defense. The shifting tides of war captured on a board no one ever suspected. The sound of wooden pieces moving across the board blended with the rustle of cloaks and the low murmur of voices. Each strategic move was a step in a dance between offense and defense, survival and conquest. The chessboard became a mirror of the battlefield, reflecting plans that could shape the fate of entire realms. Outside these chambers, armies awaited orders shaped by such silent sessions. The lives of soldiers, the fortunes of nobles, the future of kingdoms all depended on the patterns laid out beneath the king's gaze. The chessboard was a modest stage for a grand, unseen performance. Imagine the quiet confidence of those who understood the secret language of magnetic fields and weighted pieces. They held in their hands not just a game, but a repository of wisdom and foresight. The chessboard was a testament to human ingenuity, a reminder that sometimes the greatest tools are those hidden in plain sight. As the council disbands and the pieces are carefully reset, the board remains silent, unassuming, yet infinitely valuable. It waits patiently for the next session, the next strategy, the next move in the ceaseless game of power and survival. And so, in the flickering torchlight of a distant past, the chessboard holds its secrets, a quiet sentinel of war, strategy, and the subtle art of hidden knowledge. The mad jester who carried intelligence in riddles. Imagine yourself stepping into the grand halls of a medieval court. The air is thick with the scent of burning wood and faint traces of herbs used to calm nerves and ward off illness. Tapestries hang from stone walls, their colors softened by time. And the steady murmur of voices fills the room as nobles and advisors gather around. At the center of this ornate space, amid silks and gold embroidery, moves a figure dressed in motley, a jester. His bells tinkle softly with every step, a light-hearted jingle that cuts through the seriousness of court life. To the untrained eye, he is nothing more than comic relief. His painted face smiles broadly, and his body twists and twirls with practiced ease, eliciting chuckles and laughter from those present. He juggles brightly colored balls and delivers quips that seem nonsensical, odd, or silly. Yet, beneath this playful facade lies a role far more complex and crucial than mere entertainment. This mad jester is a guardian of secrets, a silent messenger who carries intelligence cloaked in riddles and rhymes. In a time when open discussion of military movements or political strategies could mean death or exile, discretion was paramount. Spies and informers were everywhere, listening in on conversations, waiting for the slightest slip. To circumvent this, those who controlled power turned to more inventive methods. The jester, dismissed as a fool, was uniquely positioned to exploit this misconception. Imagine him stepping lightly across the marble floor, gathering the court's attention with a rhymed verse. The fox hides in the bramble deep, while silent shadows do not sleep. The river bends where hawks might fly, but watch the stars that guard the sky. To most listeners, this is simply a curious, amusing rhyme. But to the king, the only one who truly understands the code, this verse translates into vital intelligence. The fox signifies an enemy scout in a forested region. Silent shadows hint at spies moving under cover of darkness. The river bending suggests a change in supply routes, and the stars point to lookouts watching the night skies for signals. Every carefully chosen word carries weight and meaning. The jester's talent lies not only in wordplay, but in his ability to weave updates into lines that seem playful, absurd, or disconnected. He composes his verses in moments stolen from the day's spectacle, perhaps scribbling notes by candlelight in his private quarters, or committing them to memory through repetitive chants that transform the information into poetic rhythm. This rhythm is essential. It makes the code easy for the king to recall and difficult for unintended listeners to understand. Picture the king seated on his throne, eyes narrowing as he listens intently to the jester's latest rhyme. The hall erupts in laughter, but the monarch's mind is elsewhere, translating the metaphor into concrete plans. Each stanza reveals shifts in enemy troop positions, supplies running low, or potential betrayals in nearby courts. With every verse, the king recalibrates his strategies, sending out new orders to generals who prepare for the changing tide of war. This system of coded communication was as ingenious as it was risky. Should the wrong person decode the jester's words, the consequences could be catastrophic. But the jester's perceived madness granted him a protective veil. No one suspected that beneath the guise of whimsy lay a repository of crucial secrets. His madness was a performance, a carefully crafted role that allowed him the freedom to speak what others could not. Life for the jester was a constant balancing act. By day, he was a source of laughter and distraction, entertaining nobles and soothing tensions. But behind the scenes, he was a crucial cog in the machinery of power. His mind raced constantly, transforming raw intelligence into riddles and rhymes, ensuring the king remained one step ahead. Consider the jester's relationship with the king, a rare intimacy forged through trust and understanding. The monarch knew the hidden messages within the verses, and the jester knew the risks he took with each coded line. Their silent pact was a testament to the subtle ways power and knowledge intertwined in court life. Beyond military intelligence, the jester's role also extended to social commentary veiled in humor. His riddles could critique nobles or hint at political shifts without inciting open rebellion. In this way, he was both a mirror and a shield, reflecting truths that others dared not voice and protecting the king from unseen threats. The mad jester story reminds us that in history, appearances can be deceiving. Those who seem least significant often hold the keys to great influence. His riddles, once dismissed as folly, carried the weight of kingdoms' destinies. And in the quiet echo of his rhymes, the future was shaped, one subtle clue at a time. So, as you imagine the castle's flickering torchlight and the echoing jingle of bells, listen closely to the words spoken in jest. Beneath their playful surface lies a hidden language, a secret code that carried the pulse of war and the fate of realms. The ink used in treaties that faded after 1 month. Imagine yourself in a dimly lit chamber within a medieval castle, the scent of parchment and beeswax candles lingering in the air. Around a sturdy wooden table, scribes and nobles gather, their faces illuminated by flickering flames, carefully drafting treaties that hold the fragile hopes of kingdoms. These documents, painstakingly written, signed with seals and signatures, were meant to bind promises and allegiances. Yet, beneath their formal appearance, some carried a secret far more elusive: ink that would disappear, fading slowly until no trace remained. This special ink was the product of careful experimentation by the king's trusted scribes, masters of language, symbolism, and the delicate art of subterfuge. In a time when alliances were as fragile as the parchment they were written on, rulers sought means to conceal their intentions and maintain plausible deniability. The ink they devised was no ordinary pigment, but a carefully concocted formula designed to vanish after approximately 1 month. To the eye, it appeared like any other writing, clear, dark, authoritative. But with the passage of days, the letters dissolved, erased by time itself. Imagine the practical applications of such a marvel. Treaties could be drafted, signed, and exchanged, allowing rulers to negotiate without immediate fear of binding consequences. A king might promise support to one ally while secretly planning betrayal. The signed agreements would serve their temporary purpose, influencing immediate decisions and actions. But once the ink faded, the evidence vanished, erasing accountability and reshaping political landscapes in subtle ways. The process of creating this ink was closely guarded. Scribes blended organic compounds, plant extracts, minerals, and natural acids in precise measures. The result was a substance sensitive to light, air, and humidity, factors that accelerated the fading process. The ink's disappearance was gradual, a slow unthreading of words, allowing just enough time for the document to fulfill its role before slipping silently into oblivion. This delicate balance reflected the intricate dance of medieval diplomacy, where trust was scarce and deception was an ever-present art. Such disappearing treaties reveal the complexities of medieval political life. The written word, so often regarded as eternal and binding, could be rendered transient, subject to manipulation and erasure. This undermined the very concept of permanence that legal documents traditionally embodied. In this way, rulers wielded language and ink as tools not only of communication, but of control, shaping narratives and power through both presence and absence. Consider the consequences for those who relied on these documents. Ambassadors and envoys might carry away fading promises, their efforts undone by the vanishing text. Intrigue deepened as secret agreements became whispers, disputes arose over the authenticity of claims, and trust eroded in courts where ink itself was unreliable. The fading treaties were a reminder that, in this world, even the most solemn vows were subject to the passage of time and the whims of those who held the pen. This phenomenon also speaks to a broader human impulse: the desire to control memory and history, to leave marks that can be shaped, altered, or erased. The fading ink becomes a metaphor for the fragile nature of trust and truth, where what is written today might not survive tomorrow. It invites reflection on how history itself is recorded and remembered, shaped as much by what disappears as by what endures. So, as you imagine the flickering candlelight casting shadows over the parchment, the careful strokes of the scribe's quill, and the silent dissolution of words into nothingness, you enter a world where documents are as fleeting as the promises they carry. The ink that fades after a month is more than a secret formula. It is a symbol of a medieval world where power was balanced on the edge of trust and deception, where what was written was only as lasting as the will to remember. The banner that signaled a false retreat to trap enemies. Imagine yourself on a sprawling medieval battlefield, the air thick with dust and the low murmur of restless armies. The sun beats down, casting long shadows across the rugged landscape, while the scent of sweat and earth lingers in the breeze. Among the chaos, a banner flutters high above the soldiers, an unmistakable symbol, yet one that carries a secret far beyond its apparent meaning. This banner, displayed upside down, was traditionally understood as a sign of surrender or defeat. Its reversed colors and inverted emblems seemed to signal submission, inviting the victorious army to advance without resistance. But in reality, This apparent gesture of capitulation was part of a meticulously crafted stratagem. A false retreat designed to lure unwary pursuers into a deadly trap. False retreats have long been a tactic in military history, relying on the psychology of pursuit and the assumption that an enemy in retreat is vulnerable and disorganized. The inverted banner was a clear, visible cue understood by both sides. A flag of surrender turned on its head, inviting pursuit. Yet, behind this apparent concession lay careful planning and rehearsal. Imagine the commanding general issuing orders in hushed tones, preparing his troops for a feigned withdrawal. Soldiers moved in disciplined formation, pulling back slowly while maintaining cohesion and readiness. The terrain had been selected with precision. A narrow ravine carved by centuries of water and wind, its steep walls offering natural concealment and a deadly advantage. As the enemy saw the inverted banner, they surged forward, eyes gleaming with the promise of easy victory. Their formation stretched and thinned in eager pursuit, confidence growing with every step. Yet, the retreating army was not fleeing in disarray, but guiding their foes into a funnel, the ravine's entrance narrowing like a throat ready to choke. Within the ravine, concealed archers, spearmen, and cavalry awaited the signal. The sounds of pursuit echoed, the scent of sweat and anticipation thickened, and then, suddenly, the trap was sprung. From the hidden heights, a deadly volley of arrows rained down, while foot soldiers surged forward to flank and encircle the trapped pursuers. The once confident enemy found themselves in a deadly embrace, caught between the ravine's cliffs and the hidden forces above. This tactic required not only strategic foresight, but flawless coordination. The troops had to maintain discipline during the retreat, resisting the urge to break ranks, while ensuring the enemy was enticed just enough to enter the trap. The banner's inverted display was the silent cue that synchronized these movements. A symbol both simple and profound, understood instantly amid the din of war. Socially and culturally, the use of such deception illustrates the intricate dance of trust and betrayal inherent in warfare. While banners traditionally conveyed honor and allegiance, here they became instruments of cunning and survival. The psychological impact was profound. To those who chased, the banner promised victory, but delivered ruin. To the commanders who wielded it, it was a tool of control over chaos, turning seeming defeat into decisive triumph. This tactic, repeated across different eras and cultures, highlights the fluidity of symbols in times of conflict. The banner's meaning was not fixed but could be inverted, weaponized to manipulate perceptions and outcomes. It speaks to the broader human experience of war, where appearances often mask deeper realities, and survival depends on both strength and subtlety. Imagine the aftermath. The ravine strewn with the fallen, the echoes of battle fading into silence, and the victorious army regrouping under banners once thought forsaken. The false retreat became legend, a testament to strategic mastery, patience, and the enduring power of symbols. As you reflect on this story, picture the banner once more, its colors reversed, fluttering gently in the wind, a quiet but potent signal woven into the fabric of war. It reminds us that in history, what seems like surrender may be the prelude to victory, and that beneath every symbol lies a story of human ingenuity, risk, and resilience. The armorer who forged hollow swords to hide messages. Imagine yourself in a dimly lit workshop, the air thick with the scent of heated metal and wood shavings. The steady ring of hammer against anvil echoes softly, a rhythmic heartbeat that marks the passage of countless hours spent shaping steel into instruments of war and protection. This is the domain of the armorer, a master craftsman entrusted with the creation of royal blades, objects both beautiful and deadly, symbols of power and prestige. But this armorer's work extended beyond mere metallurgy. Amid the sparks and embers, he secretly forged swords unlike any other, blades hollowed out along their core, meticulously crafted to conceal thin scrolls bearing messages. These hollow swords became silent carriers of secrets, slipping past enemy eyes and hostile lands, connecting distant outposts with information vital to the survival of kingdoms. The art of crafting a hollow sword demanded precision and discretion. Imagine the delicate balance required. The blade needed to retain its strength and deadly sharpness, while housing a cavity just large enough to hold the slender parchment within. The seams were sealed flawlessly, often hidden beneath the ornate hilt or within the fuller, the groove running along the blade's surface. Such craftsmanship ensured the sword appeared ordinary, fooling even the most vigilant observers. The armorer's role was both technical and clandestine. He worked under the watchful eyes of nobles and kings, trusted not only with their protection, but with their most guarded secrets. The thin scrolls inside these blades might contain strategic plans, lists of allies, or urgent warnings. Messages that, if intercepted, could shift the balance of power. Imagine the quiet intensity with which the armorer prepared each blade, aware that a single flaw could expose lives and entire armies. This method of message transmission was ingenious for its time. Unlike couriers who risked capture, or messengers who carried visible letters, the hollow swords moved openly, carried by trusted warriors or envoys. Their deadly function served as a shield for their secret purpose. Few would suspect that beneath the gleaming steel lay fragile words of great consequence. Consider the logistics involved. The armorer had to coordinate closely with spies and commanders, ensuring that messages were written on thin, durable parchment that could withstand the journey sealed within metal. The insertion and retrieval of these scrolls required practiced hands and moments of careful exchange, often under the cover of darkness or within the shadows of bustling courts. The symbolism of these swords was profound. They were not only weapons of battle, but vessels of communication, merging the tangible and intangible realms of power. A sword that could strike down an enemy could also carry the weight of strategy and intelligence, embodying the dual nature of conflict, force and knowledge intertwined. Moreover, this technique speaks to the resourcefulness of those who operated in the shadows of medieval warfare and diplomacy. When open channels failed or proved too risky, innovation flourished in unexpected forms. The armorer's hollow swords became silent emissaries, bridging gaps and weaving networks of trust across contested borders. Imagine the journey of such a sword, passed from hand to hand, carried across rugged terrain or crowded marketplaces, its secret intact. Each step was a risk, yet the blade's outward appearance offered a shield of invisibility. Enemy eyes might glance upon the weapon, admiring its craftsmanship or fearing its edge, unaware of the message concealed within. The creation of hollow swords also demanded a measure of secrecy within the armorer's own workshop. He had to protect his methods from prying eyes and jealous rivals, ensuring that this subtle art did not fall into enemy hands. Trust was paramount, not only in the forging, but in the keeping of these secrets. Over time, as communication methods evolved and new technologies emerged, such hidden messages within weapons became less common. Yet, the legacy of the armorer's craft remains a testament to human ingenuity, a reminder that even the most unyielding materials can harbor delicate truths. As you picture this scene, the flicker of forge fires, the shimmer of steel, the careful folding of a tiny scroll, you glimpse the quiet complexity of medieval life, where survival often depended as much on secrets hidden beneath the surface as on strength wielded openly. The armorer's hollow swords remind us that history is shaped not only by grand battles and visible power, but also by the silent whispers carried within the edge of a blade, messages folded into steel, waiting to be revealed at the right moment. Imagine yourself holding such a sword, feeling its weight in your hand, sensing both its lethal potential and the invisible words it guards, an embodiment of trust, craft, and the intricate dance of secrecy and survival. The court painter who embedded troop movements in art. Imagine yourself in the grand halls of a medieval palace, where light filters softly through stained glass windows, casting kaleidoscopic patterns upon tapestries and paintings lining the stone walls. The scent of oil paints and aged wood mingles faintly with the warmth of burning torches. Here, art is not merely decoration but a language, a silent voice speaking truths known only to a select few. Among the court's many servants and artists, one stood apart, a painter entrusted not only with the task of capturing beauty, but also with conveying secrets that could sway the fate of kingdoms. This court painter was a master of subtlety, weaving hidden meanings into the brushstrokes of landscapes, portraits, and grand scenes. To the untrained eye, his paintings were exquisite but ordinary. Rolling hills dotted with trees, castles perched on distant cliffs, birds soaring across clear skies. But to those versed in the silent code, each canvas was a map, a carefully disguised record of troop positions, castle fortifications, and strategic movements. Imagine the painter preparing a gift for an allied ruler. The canvas might depict a serene forest scene, but the number of trees lining the horizon represented the count of battalions stationed along a frontier. The shapes and flight patterns of birds hidden within the foliage signaled troop maneuvers, a subtle message conveyed through nature's forms. Colors played their part in this cryptic language. Shades of red might indicate advancing forces, while cool blues marked defensive positions. A crimson leaf here, a sapphire shadow there. These details guided allies' eyes to understand the complexities of impending campaigns without a single word being spoken or written. Such paintings were exchanged as tokens of goodwill, valued gifts that adorned the halls of kings and nobles. Their beauty invited admiration and curiosity, yet their true purpose lay beneath the surface, accessible only to those who held the key to their symbolism. This form of covert communication was both art and espionage, blending creativity with strategy. It allowed rulers to share vital intelligence securely, reducing the risk of intercepted letters or overheard conversations. A painting could traverse borders and oceans, its secrets safe behind layers of pigment and imagery. Imagine the painter's careful hand mixing colors with intention, every stroke deliberate. The composition balanced aesthetics with hidden meaning, ensuring the canvas pleased the eye while serving as a strategic document. His work required not only artistic skill, but deep understanding of military tactics and court politics. Behind the grandeur of the palace walls, this quiet collaboration shaped the course of wars and alliances. While soldiers marched and generals planned, the painter's brush recorded and conveyed plans that could tip the scales in favor of one side or another. Art became more than expression. It was a vessel of power, a silent herald of movement and intention. The court painter's legacy endured not in bold declarations, but in whispered interpretations, in the eyes that looked beyond the obvious to discern the hidden truths. As you imagine the soft rustle of canvas and the muted conversation around the unveiling of such a painting, consider the layers beneath, the coded landscapes and secret signs that could change the fate of realms. Here, in the intersection of beauty and cunning, lies a story of ingenuity and quiet influence. So next time you gaze upon a painting, remember that sometimes what is unseen can speak louder than what is visible. The court painter, with patience and skill, transformed art into a living map of strategy, embedding secrets in colors, trees, and birds, forever bridging creativity and war. The secret room behind the chapel's false altar wall. Imagine yourself entering a quiet chapel within an ancient castle. The air is thick with the soft scent of incense, mingling with the faint chill of stone that has witnessed centuries of whispered prayers. Rays of pale light filter through stained glass, casting muted colors across the worn pews and the polished wooden floor. At the far end, an altar stands solemnly, ornate yet unassuming, its carved figures weathered but dignified. To the casual visitor, it is a place of sanctuary, a sacred space for reflection and worship. Yet, behind this sacred facade lies a secret carefully concealed from all but a select few. The altar is more than it seems. Hidden within its intricate woodwork and stone, a false wall serves as a door, an entrance to a clandestine chamber beyond. This secret room, modest in size but vast in importance, is where the king met with his closest advisors, spies, scribes, and shadow agents. In silence and secrecy, they planned the fate of kingdoms, preparing for invasions that would alter the course of history. Imagine the gentle creak of the hidden door sliding open, the faint scent of parchment and ink greeting those who enter. Inside, the room is dimly lit by flickering candles, their flames casting dancing shadows on walls lined with maps, scrolls, and coded letters. The atmosphere is heavy with quiet anticipation. Here, voices drop to whispers, and every gesture is measured. Time seems to slow as the king and his council pore over intelligence gathered from distant lands and unknown enemies. This secret chamber was a refuge from the clamor of court life, a place where strategy could be forged away from prying eyes and ears. The false altar masked not just the door, but the very existence of this room, making it a perfect sanctuary for the exchange of information too sensitive for the open halls. The chapel's peaceful exterior gave cover to this heart of intrigue. Imagine the king leaning over a sprawling map, tracing the routes of his armies with a steady finger. Around him, trusted spies report on enemy troop movements, intercepted messages, and the subtle shifts in allegiance among rival nobles. Scribes diligently record every word, crafting dispatches to be sent with trusted couriers under the cover of darkness. The shadow agents, masters of disguise and deception, share news gathered from the farthest corners of the realm. The secrecy of this hidden room was vital. If discovered, the entire war effort could be compromised. The false altar was an ingenious solution, blending faith and politics, sanctity and subterfuge. It reminds us how power often operates behind veils, where appearances can mask the true workings of a kingdom. Life for those who entered this chamber was one of silent vigilance. They knew that their whispered plans could change the lives of thousands, and the weight of responsibility pressed upon them like the stone walls that enclose the space. Each meeting was a step along the delicate path between peace and conflict. This secret room behind the chapel's false altar wall tells a story of the unseen struggles that shaped history. It invites us to consider the quiet corners where decisions are made, the spaces hidden in plain sight, and the subtle interplay of faith and strategy. So, as you imagine the soft glow of candlelight flickering against ancient stones, think of the silent council gathered behind the altar, plotting invasions, weaving intelligence, and steering the destiny of kingdoms from the shadows of a sanctuary. The gold coins minted with whisper-scratch messages. Imagine yourself holding a small, gleaming gold coin, its surface worn smooth by countless hands and pockets. At first glance, it appears ordinary, shining softly in the light, stamped with the familiar visage of a king or symbol of a realm. Yet, along the edge, hidden beneath the rim, lies a secret, a tiny, almost imperceptible scratch, a single word etched with care. This discreet marking was no accident, but a deliberate code, part of a subtle language hidden in plain sight. These were the whisper-scratch messages, secret words carved into gold coins that carried meaning far beyond their metal value. In a world where direct communication could be dangerous or impossible, the exchange of these marked coins served as a covert method of sending information. They passed silently from hand to hand. Bribes slipped into palms, gifts presented in secret meetings, payments made under the watchful eyes of foes. The gold itself held allure and trust, but the true power lay in the scratched word, a cipher understood only by those who knew the code. It was a language of shadows, where a single word might mean safe, betray, retreat, or ally. The act of engraving these tiny messages required skill and subtlety. Mint workers or trusted agents used fine tools to scratch letters so small they escaped casual notice, often placed just beneath the coin's raised edge. The scratch was shallow but deliberate, meant to survive circulation while avoiding detection by those uninitiated. The coins had to maintain their appearance of legitimacy, for if suspicion arose, their secret value would be lost, and the messages rendered useless or dangerous. Imagine the tension of such exchanges. The flick of a coin from one hand to another, the brief glance to confirm the hidden mark, and the silent understanding that a world of meaning lay beneath the surface. This method allowed covert communication across distances and through layers of intrigue. A nobleman might pass such a coin to a messenger. A spy might receive it at a tavern, or a conspirator might plant it as a sign of loyalty or warning. The coin's physical weight was slight, but the message it carried could tip the balance of power. These whisper-scratch coins also reflect a medieval society deeply attuned to secrecy and symbolism. Trust was fragile, and information was often the most valuable currency. The coins blurred the line between commerce and communication, turning everyday objects into vessels of hidden knowledge. They illustrate how people adapted to surveillance and danger, crafting methods that were at once ingenious and understated. Consider the practical challenges, too. The code had to be simple enough to memorize, but complex enough to evade casual discovery. The scratched words were usually short, single syllables or phrases, enabling quick recognition without the need for lengthy explanation. The coins traveled far, through markets, courts, and battlefields, carrying their cryptic messages across borders and alliances. Beyond their tactical use, these coins speak to the human desire to connect secretly, to speak in whispers when open speech could mean ruin. They embody the delicate dance of trust and deception that defined much of medieval politics and society. Through these tiny scratches, vast webs of loyalty and betrayal were woven, linking people and events in ways invisible to the untrained eye. So, as you hold this imagined coin, feeling its cool metal and tracing its worn edges, let yourself ponder the secret word etched just out of sight. It is a reminder that history often hides its deepest stories not in grand proclamations, but in the quiet scratches beneath a golden rim. Whispers of power, trust, and intrigue passed silently through time. The crown itself was lined with emergency war directives. Imagine yourself in the quiet stillness of a royal chamber, the soft rustle of velvet brushing against polished gold, and the faint scent of aged leather and parchment filling the air. Before you rests the king's crown, a symbol of sovereignty, crafted with exquisite care and adorned with jewels that catch the light like captured stars. Yet beneath its gleaming exterior lies a secret layer of protection, far more subtle than any forged metal or guarded gate. Hidden beneath the crown's rich velvet lining are delicate flaps, each concealing tiny scrolls, emergency war directives written with painstaking precision. These confidential commands were not meant for the court or the council, but solely for the heir to inherit. In times of crisis, when the kingdom was besieged or the sovereign kidnapped, the crown itself became a vessel of survival and strategy, carrying within it the vital instructions needed to navigate the darkest hours. The existence of such concealed messages reveals the intricate planning and forethought invested in royal succession and security. Kings and their advisors understood that power was fragile, vulnerable to sudden upheaval by enemies both outside and within. The crown, always present on the monarch's head, was thus transformed into a secret archive, a portable war room, accessible only to the rightful successor, safeguarding the realm's continuity when all else seemed lost. Imagine the heir receiving the crown in a solemn ceremony, the weight of gold and velvet settling not just upon their brow, but upon their very future. The scrolls beneath the lining were written in cipher and shorthand, their delicate parchment thin but durable, carefully preserved through generations. They contained orders for rallying loyal forces, securing key fortresses, and communicating with allies. Blueprints for resistance and restoration etched in ink and hope. These directives were crafted in times of relative peace, often in hidden chambers deep within the palace or cloistered studies where scribes labored by candlelight. The language was precise yet guarded, designed to be clear to the air but incomprehensible to any who might intercept the crown. The scrolls were folded with care and tucked beneath the soft velvet, protected from damage by the crown's ornate frame, ensuring that in moments of peril they would be ready to guide decisive action. The use of the crown in this way highlights the intimate connection between symbolism and survival in royal life. The crown's outward display was one of majesty and divine right, visible to all as a beacon of authority. Yet inwardly, it harbored secrets vital to the very existence of the monarchy. This duality reflects the precarious nature of rule, where ceremony and crisis coexisted, and where trust was both bestowed and tested. Consider the social weight of this hidden knowledge. The heir, upon donning the crown, inherited not only a kingdom but a sacred trust, the responsibility to act swiftly and wisely in times of danger. The scrolls beneath the velvet were a tangible reminder that rulership demanded preparedness beyond pomp and ceremony. They served as a silent covenant between past and future, linking generations through shared duty and vigilance. Historically, such concealed instructions may have played crucial roles during sieges, kidnappings, or palace coups. Though often shrouded in secrecy and rarely documented openly, these emergency directives symbolize the enduring human need to plan for uncertainty, to prepare for moments when survival depends on quick decisions and steadfast resolve. Imagine the quiet moments when an heir, alone in a chamber lit by a single candle, unfolds these scrolls beneath the crown. The soft crackle of parchment, the careful tracing of words, the dawning understanding of a legacy that extends beyond birthright, all unfolding in hushed reverence. In these delicate texts lie the hopes of a kingdom, carried within the very emblem of rule. As you reflect on this hidden facet of the royal crown, picture its dual nature, brilliant and imposing to the outside world, yet soft and secret within. It reminds us that symbols of power often hold deeper truths, layers of strategy, protection, and inheritance woven invisibly into their fabric. The crown's emergency war directives are more than hidden scrolls. They are a testament to foresight, resilience, and the unbroken thread of leadership through history.